Welcome to Not Just Ads, the show where B2B brands discover how creator-led content drives pipeline, builds trust, and grows long-term brand equity. Each episode, we speak with business leaders, founders, and creators who are defining their categories. I'm your host, Marcus Sherwin, and this is the Creator Economy for B2B. Welcome today to Not Just Ads. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Jared Carneson. He's the Global Social Head for Creators and Head of Social at Adobe. Jared's career spanned across many continents, from South Africa to San Francisco. He's now helping shape one of the world's biggest creative companies show up in the creator economy. Jared, thanks very much for joining us today. Really
Thanks
happy to talk with you. Great.
Excited to be here.
Great. Well, I actually saw that you were at Cannes this year, and there was obviously, you know, there's a big, it's a big topic and it's quite broad. And I think B2B is definitely kind of having a moment around the creator space now. But I'd love to just get from your point of view of like how you see it and how you see it from your own personal perspective, but also from how Adobe sits within that as well.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating to see how creators have grown within the B2B space as their own niche. I think when the creator economy really started to boom, I think most people kind of drift to lifestyle creators. That's the first image that is kind of conjured up in your head. But there is this whole other division that has been thriving behind the scenes with key opinion leaders, right? Because it all comes down to trust. And I think as younger and younger folks enter the workforce that are driven by peer recommendations or are influenced heavily by peer recommendations, we're starting to see people go to influential people within the B2B space for recommendations. In fact, I think some Forrester data that I saw not so long ago said younger buyers are involving around 10 plus external influences in their decision-making process. So I think that's a real view of where we are now and where we continue to be headed in the future.
Yeah, it's really interesting as well, because I read recently as well, I think it was in Gartner report, but they were just talking about how, you know, a lot of Gen Z people now are in the position in B2B companies where they're actually making budget decisions. And if they're looking at these kind of creators or influencers as well for approval or even just kind of recommendations or like kind of how they see certain services and products, it's definitely a really important space to be kind of leaning into, I think, when you can see the impact and the influence that they have.
Absolutely. And I think there's been a lot of maturity in measurement on that side of the business. So it's no longer just about partnering with these influential voices around reach and awareness, but it's also about driving business results and the bottom line. And so there's been a ton of progress around modeling the impact that these influential voices have on the bottom line, generating ARR, generating traffic. And so that has also amplified the boom that we're seeing within companies. And so absolutely some of it has to do with younger folks entering the workforce, having more decision-making power, having more purchasing power. But some of it is also with the maturity of the measurement frameworks and how this is proving out for businesses.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we spoke with the director of social at Salesforce recently, and she was kind of giving us an interesting anecdote in terms of they ran a campaign, and then within a few days they got a call from somebody that had followed this particular creator, and they were like, I didn't know that you guys did this and we're really interested in it and so on. And she was kind of saying like, I wouldn't have put that ICP as following that creator. So it's always interesting when you get these kind of, and probably what happened there, it may not show up in an attribution model, but like what you mentioned, that's all maturing now, and that there's obviously qualitative aspects, I suppose, that are taken into consideration as well, that is actually showing what the impact is in it. Like when you look at it in Adobe and you're launching some of these, say, partnerships with creators and stuff, like what do you look at, like even as kind of like leading indicators to see like, okay, there's an alignment here, or we might be on the right track, or what do you normally think?
Yeah, I mean, there are a multitude of factors. There's probably around 10 plus that we look at when we're looking to partner with a creator. I think, authenticity first and foremost, right? Are they a user of the service? Do they have an opinion? Are they generating thought leadership in the space that we're hoping to move in? A lot of it has to do with their average engagement rate. Do they have an engaged and active community? Does that fit our target audience. Brand safety concerns are also part of the analysis. And then, of course, following, reach, etc., do come into play, but it is really more about the fit and the impact, because so much more of that can be achieved with strategic paid media and allow listing on, the partner's content. But more than anything, it's got to be a mutually beneficial partnership across the board between brand and influencer. And we're also seeing, and I think this is the trend across the board when I speak to other folks who work for large companies within the creator space, is we're moving away from very transactional once-off moments to long-term partnerships with some of these creators. And so those are some of the factors we look at, but it's also like knowing that we're going to be building a long-term relationship with the partner. I think, other things that are just really fascinating in this space is to consider is that some of these influential voices have the reach and sway that traditional media companies have had in the past. Some of them have longer watch times than blockbuster movies, right? They are generating a significant amount of interest. And so it's becoming a business imperative to be in those spaces with the voices that are helping co-create and craft the narrative.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. How do you see it then normally when you mentioned as well about authenticity? And I think that's a big theme as well. It's like if it's just like, okay, we think that this isn't this audience, if the creator doesn't really know or doesn't really believe in the product that they're promoting, I think the audience kind of get that straight away. So it makes a lot of sense what you mean with the long play. But what do you see in terms of what has been most effective? Is it kind of like looking at maybe some that have a large engagement, but that may not have a massive audience, but that you see that it's actually addressing this particular ICP or this particular segment? Do you see that being more effective than, say, someone that's like kind of a well-known in the particular vertical that they're in, or is it a bit of both?
It's a bit of a mixed bag, and I often find myself surprised by the data. We had this campaign where we had essentially put together a celebrity social spot, and it was performing incredibly well. The reach was phenomenal as expected, but there was also a micro influencer that we were working with, relatively small following, but just very meaningful content for that segment that outperformed based on reach and average engagement rate compared to the celebrity endorsement piece. And so you get that mixed bag some of the time where, the micro influencers that have a very targeted message and know the audience intimately and understand those pain points in a really unique way, they're able to address some of those algorithmic needs that the platforms look for and really boost that content in ways that, you wouldn't be able to do with a traditional ad spot or social spot. So it is a mixed bag, because we also do see mega influencers with massive reach or, creators with a substantial following driving outsized impact as well. So we tend to run a strategy that works across the maturity level of creators at all times.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I guess it's like having that broad kind of, you can see what's going to work and what's effective as well. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about in terms of how do you see it then with employees in the company in being advocates for the brand, some that have a large following themselves. I know you have the flagship summit that you have in every year. I think it's in April, is it? No, the Adobe Summit.
Yeah, Adobe Summit, yeah.
Yeah, and we see a lot about that, like a lot of content around it and stuff. But how do you see in terms of actually, and some companies are doing this, some are doing it well, some are just kind of dipping into it at the moment. But how do you see that in terms of employee advocacy, of like employees talking about the brand and them talking about it, giving their own voice on it, but staying on brand as well? How do you see that in terms of evolving over the next, say, year or two?
I think employee advocacy has always been incredibly important, and you tend to see it really thrive within a startup environment, and then it kind of mixes in the middle within corporate environments. I think historically large companies have shied away from having employee advocacy advocates, dig in and really share stories. And so that creates an environment of fear in a lot of organizations. I'm, very happy to say that that isn't the case with Adobe. We have a lot of employee advocates sharing content all the time that are very proud of like the product developments, excited about the news. And it has an outsized impact on amplification of, key messages, really exciting announcements and launches. And so I think you're going to continue to see people reevaluate some of their internal policies around employee advocacy, but it still remains a there is some outsized risk in that space.
Yeah.
There are a lot of folks who, don't want to dip their toe into that space because they may have what they feel are controversial personal opinions about other things that they share online. And so it's really finding that happy medium of creating a space that enables employees who do want to participate in evangelism and advocacy as they see fit, but also protects the brand and the employees themselves from unnecessary backlash.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? Because I think the bigger the brand, the I suppose the more in terms of like corporate comms and stuff like that, and they have, and rightly so as well. You want to make sure that you're not going to end up with the wrong kind of thing taken in the wrong way and so on. So it's a tricky one, I guess, for the larger the organization. It's like having those rules in place, but also then I suppose trying to encourage staff to do it. It's they want to put it from their own voice as well. So it's a tricky one to get right. The bigger the organization, I guess.
Absolutely. And you see it. I mean, there are some massive missteps for some organizations, and there are great successes for others. And so it is a space that I think people are still trying to find where the sides, where the barriers and the boundaries are of how to safely encourage participation.
Yeah. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about Adobe, because there's always so much going on. There's always something new. There's it's a company that's constantly evolving, and it's so broad as well. But maybe you could just share a little bit about, you mentioned when we were off air about Premiere Mobile, I think it was called, as a new product that you've launched.
Very excited.
Yeah.
About Premiere Mobile. I mean, look, it's one of the most amazing companies to work for. There is always so much excitement and so much rapid development. There's so much research that's happening behind closed doors, so we get a peek under that curtain a little bit at times. It's really, really exciting to see all of the novel shifts that are coming through product on a daily basis. I think I'm particularly excited about Premiere Mobile because I'm not the strongest video editor, and Premiere Pro has always been. It is a professional grade editing app. Blockbuster movies are edited on Premiere Pro. Dune, Anora, they're all edited in in the software. And so there is this perception of, it's a hard thing to start to learn in. And so a lot of people don't even open the app and begin to learn all the ins and outs of Premiere. It takes a long time to master. But Premiere Mobile has been purpose-built from the ground up for a creator audience, right? So people who may not be in the business of making Hollywood blockbusters, but still want to create really professional video, whether it's for YouTube or it's a home video, whatever it may be. And so there are a ton of amazing features that are baked right into Premiere Mobile. And so it launched for pre-access or beta access in the App Store for iPhone just here in September. I think towards the end of September, it'll be out for everyone to use and test. I'll send you a link so you can get some early access after this.
Yeah, we'll put a link on the show notes as well.
Awesome. Yeah, put it to the test. It just has everything that you want from a professional grade app, and it's free. So there's none of the clutter that you get in some of the other apps. There's none of the data concerns that you get in some of the other apps. You're not constantly getting a pop-up to gain access to a feature that's behind a paywall that some of the other apps that we are in the market with or are competing against within that market allow and push forward. But it also has things like, noise cancellation, and it helps crisp up audio and voice. And so some of the stuff that we've seen really, really excel within Adobe Podcast comes through. There's one-click resizing for all of the top channels, so it'll cut all of your video down automatically for those formats, auto captioning, and an unlimited amount of layers across text, video, and audio. So something that's really, really exciting. It's going to give me the ability to finally edit video. I'm proficient with a lot of the design apps, but when it comes to video, it's just not been something I've been able to crack. So very excited to be playing with that now and add video to my array of skills.
Nice. Yeah. I'm definitely going to give it a shot, because I'm with some of the stuff for the podcast, we make reels and stuff, and we have some design team, but sometimes if it's just one or two, I can just do it myself. But I've yet to find an app that does everything well. I have one that it can take the clips, but the other is better for editing. So I'm definitely going to give this a try when it's out, or when you share the link. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Cool. I actually saw you had a partnership as well with LinkedIn at Cannes this year, no? On the just outside the Carlton, no, on the like the porch of the Carlton, with around video and stuff. So I guess it's a perfect match in a way, because LinkedIn is kind of, there's a big emphasis on obviously thought leadership and thought leader ads and stuff like that. And you with the software piece, just making it easier, because I think when you talk to people about video, it's like what you mentioned. It's this thing of like, okay, well, I have to edit it, and then do I need to put in the subtitles, and then and the more senior you go up in the company, it's like it's just more time and so on. I think the easier that you can make that for people, it's just going to make more people involved in it.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think LinkedIn's doing a fantastic job of kind of opening the lens for folks to experiment with video. I think there are some incredible voices out there who write remarkable pieces of thought leadership, but often feel intimidated to start the video, right? It's that whole like, what do I do with my hands? How do I kick this off? How do I translate the thoughts in my head into video? And so then they never start. So it's great to see them kind of pushing more into video-based thought leadership. So I'm excited for what they're doing on the platform, and we're excited to be partnering with them to kind of get some of that out there.
Yeah, no, it's definitely exciting times ahead. How do you see, like, in terms of, since you've started in Adobe, like, what do you think have been the biggest changes around kind of this space of like B2B creators, and say from when you started versus now? How do you think it's come, and where do you see it going in the future?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic question. I think we're seeing greater proliferation of B2B creators. I think a lot more folks are stepping into that space to generate thought leadership that separates them from the swath of other thought leadership that's being generated on platforms like LinkedIn. I think you're starting to see the emergence of the executive as a thought leader. People like Adam Masari do a fantastic job of just casually hopping into the conversation and giving some updates in his very casual style. It feels very accessible and approachable, and it feels like you're getting an inside peek into a leader's world inside an enormous company. And so I think that's leading others to want to communicate directly with customers and clients in a way that feels authentic. And so proliferation is one of those areas. I think as this starts to proliferate more, you'll see more of an emphasis on measurement and attribution, as I mentioned earlier. I think you're going to see hybrid models and content formats, right? Like just like you're probably experiencing in the podcast world. There is podcasts, but vodcast clips are an incredible generator of engagement. I think you see a lot of celebrities actually setting up shots to look like podcasts to post content that may not actually be podcasts or vodcasts. So that format has been very, very sticky as a social content franchise. And I think you're going to see a lot of autonomy in the buyer journey, right? Buyers are relying more on self-serve and external content and influencer content. So the more that buyers continue to rely on that, I think the greater the proliferation of content. And then, of course, we'd be remiss to ignore the elephant in the room around AI and agentic solutions. I think it opens the lens for more people to tell stories that felt intimidated before. And it also allows for layers of efficiency within certain organizations. And so I think AI tools will continue to augment the process to give more people voices and widen the lens of who gets to tell a story.
Yeah, and I think also as well, from the podcast world where you mentioned about AI, I just think some of the tools, it's just speed up so much stuff in terms of editing, in terms of like, even it's not that it's replicating voices, but that it's like it can improve the sound quality, little things that probably 3-4 years ago would have taken ages. You would have needed somebody to knows the platform very well. Now with AI tools, there's a huge amount of stuff on back end that it's just speed up the process so much.
And that's core to our belief at Adobe. Additive AI that helps refine workflows and gives you the optionality. There are certain people who would love to just engage in the craft, right? They don't want to automate any of the process around creating art or creating audio. But then there are folks who, have 10 to 15 other jobs and they just want to clean up the audio super quickly and they don't have the budget to pay, a sound engineer. And so they don't get started. They can click a button and clean up the audio, right? There'll still be a ton of people who go through sound engineers to clean up the audio if they have the finances and the time to do so. But this just widens the lens of what people are able to do and how they're able to go about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. How do you see with in Adobe in terms of the overall media mix? marketing mix. How do you see this place of like B2B creators in terms of where that sits and kind of like the overall share in terms of like, are you seeing that like that there's a big influence now of like, actually we can put budget behind this. We see that there's opportunity here. Or is it in the phase where it's like, yeah, it's good. We can see that it'll test it, but it's not like super priority. Or are you seeing that shift?
It's massive priority for us. It's, it's one of our key audiences. So it's definitely not a test and learn environment for us. It's full steam ahead as one of our priority audiences. And so it always has been, right? When you look at some of the solutions we have on the DX side of the business, digital experience side of the business, around marketers are one of our key audiences there. And they want to hear from other marketers and thought leadership in that space around what's working for other CMOs, what's working for other CIOs within the marketing tech stack. And so that's always been critical for us. But I think now with the tools and the platforms evolving to where they are now, we finally have a platform to scale in ways that we haven't been able to before.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. What do you see then in terms of like, let's say we have, say, companies that are maybe a bit before this that they maybe have tested, but they haven't really kind of like given it a proper test, or they haven't seen consistent results and stuff. What would be any learnings that you would give them advice in terms of like getting started working with creators in terms of like what to look out for or what to look for measurement, leading indicators?
I think find the right fit for the message and for the brand that you're working with, and then run small, meaningful tests and optimize against those tests on an ongoing basis, right? So you shouldn't dip your toe in, work with one influencer and decide off the back of that. I think run a small pool, and rather start small, run a small pool and optimize. Tag the content, like build a taxonomy, and then look at the patterns in the data around what's working and what isn't working. I think, key leading indicators are engagement rates for sure. And then also look at the conversion rates, right? Like how is it driving traffic? How is it stimulating conversation? And it's all going to depend on the objectives that you're hoping to meet, right? If you have or you don't have a ton of unaided awareness around a service offering, you may need an influencer or a creator to step in that space and help you build the awareness and then judge it on that. Also, don't expect, a piece of content to do all things. I think, given how condensed or circular the funnel has become, a lot of people expect it to operate in that space, and you've got to give it some time. Run 6 months of testing to see what works, and then optimize month on month against what you're seeing work.
Do you see as well with like a lot of people talk about it now in terms of the creator's reach, but then if you see that you're getting that, then amplifying it by media as well. Have you seen that work well, or do you think it should be something that kind of isolated?
It works incredibly well, right? I think we're in a space where the algorithms have moved from a kind of like a social graph to an interest graph. And so they can be slightly more unpredictable, but once you start to get a sense of what works for your brand in those spaces and for the creators, that'll work to a certain extent, but then you have to amplify to extend the reach. And then obviously the amplification also helps you refine the target audience, right? So you're able to extend it to parts of the business where you're hoping to convert or, grow your reach or grow your share. And so I think the two work together incredibly well. We've seen great results at Adobe by running those two things in tandem. And so we look at the early signals around how something is performing against an engagement rate because it normalizes the paid media spend. So it actually gives you a real sense of how that content is performing against the visibility it has. And then off the back of that, we then move that into more of a paid media motion or a full funnel action to either drive all the way through to conversion or, create some demand creation or some demand progression. And so that's been a very useful workflow for us.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Apart from Premiere Mobile then, and anything else in terms of what's coming next with Adobe, events or like new products down the line, or what else should we look out for in the next couple of months?
Very excited for Adobe Max. It's our big creativity conference. It's in LA. It's happening at the end of October. We have some incredible luminary speakers and keynote speakers lined up. It's just this amazing gathering of creative professionals, creators, business professionals professionals. And it's where we launch and announce probably the most kind of feature development and innovation in the year. We're constantly announcing, but Adobe Max is a place and time when there is going to be a ton of news going about some of the developments you can expect from Adobe in the new year, and that'll be releasing at speed in October. I think an area I'm particularly excited about is also the stuff we're seeing within the context of Firefly. And so Firefly is our generative AI offering. It does text to image, text to video, all of that. So that's really fun to experiment with and ideate. I personally use it for a lot of ideation for storyboarding in Firefly boards. And I think the approach there is really interesting because all of the top models that you see out in the world, the runways, the Lumas, we just actually launched today that Luma is available in Firefly. All those top models are available in Firefly, and you pay one subscription and you have access to all of them instead of going and subscribing to the Google VO model and then a runway model and then a Luma model. You're able to play with all of them and kind of test what works frame by frame. And so I've had a lot of fun ideating in that space. And then, of course, we always have the Firefly model, which is the IP safe, commercially safe model if we're producing any assets that we're taking into an ad space. So that's been a really interesting tool for me. And there's going to be a ton of announcements around that at Max. Excited to hear your thoughts on some of that when it comes out in 38 days, I think.
Great. Yeah, we'll leave the details. If anyone is not there, are you streaming any of that online? I guess there'll be tons of content shared afterwards, but
so
will there be some online sessions as well? Is it hybrid?
Absolutely. All of the sessions will be online. All of the lab sessions will be online. I'm talking in one of the lab sessions with a creator and one of our wonderful evangelists about how to identify trends on social and get ahead of them. But there's just so much content over the course of the event, which runs for multiple days. All of it will be streamed live. I encourage people to hop on and take a look.
Great. We'll leave the details in the notes as well. Jared, it was great talking with you. Thank you for joining us on the show. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Great. Thanks, Jared.
Cool. Thanks, Marcus.